FPL Game Week 6 Wildcard Draft. That's right, the chip is active. Welcome to the FPL Armband. I'm your host, Chris, and unusually Kieran is not with us tonight because he is working late, but he was happy for me to plough on with my Wildcard Draft reveal, so here I am to present it. Bear with me, it's my first ever solo episode, so if I go on too long, you'll have to let me know in the comments. Tonight's episode, I'm going to share my Game Week 5 points and my team. I'm really talk about what decisions made me want a wildcard. I'm going to give my thoughts on the meta, and I'm also going to run through each of the picks from my wildcard team and why I've selected them, essentially. Quick shout out just to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content or any of our previous episodes. Kieran and I would love to continue making FPL videos because we like chatting about football, and if you're able to show any ounce of support to help us fight that YouTube algorithm, it would be so greatly appreciated. Right, on to my team. I scored 49 points, and it was a green arrow up to 4.9 million, which I was obviously happy with. It was a decent game week, I think, when it felt like a lot of people played their bench boost with a good hit rate. I decided to play Dubravka over Sanchez, which worked out really well. I also placed a Steve first bench for Murillo, who I was quite sure was going to miss out, but I just decided to play him there anyway. I also chose to play Rodon over JSL. It was a bit disappointing that Rodon ended on 9 DEFCON, so he was unlucky to miss out when, since the game week has closed, Reinders got miscalculated. He had actual 11 DEFCON rather than 12, still kept his points. I would have much preferred they got Rodon wrong, giving him 10 rather than 9. But hey ho, it is what it is. It was a nice green arrow, obviously, with my chips in hand. So I think probably just to talk a little bit about why I decided to wildcard on the back of this. So I think a number of players in my team in the first 5 game weeks have just been utter failures. I think Murillo, case in point, Forest are not what they were last season. That's been evident in the first few game weeks. He's obviously now injured. They've got a new manager in Ange. It doesn't look like he's going to defend. Watkins, I think Villa have been atrocious. How they only drew with Sunderland, I have no idea. And Wirtz, the icing on the disgusting cake, really, with a cameo and a yellow card against Everton. Oh, not to mention JSL, obviously, I suppose, injured, so no fault of his own. But yeah, his returns paltry, 2-2-0-0 and a 1, I believe. 5 points in 5 weeks for what was 6.5 million is really poor. And perhaps a special mention as well for Kieran Drewsbury Hall, who, despite the fact that he did haul against Wolves, and thank him for that, he is just like a yellow card magnet. 4 already, 1 away from suspension, I think. These players cost me 30 million of my budget, and the fact that that's a third, and all of them have been pretty much fails. Yeah, it's just how when I loaded up my game week 6 team, I thought I can really pivot this now. I've got 2 free transfers, and I was planning to get Haaland, maybe Reinders as well. Why not just play the wildcard now? It was probably going to be played between game week 7 and 9. Get 15 players I'm happy with, and then roll those free transfers into game week 7 and beyond. So yeah, that's sort of why I decided to wildcard. And I suppose just on the meta, before we move on to the picks I'm going to choose, I think personally, even after the first 5 game weeks, I haven't adjusted the fact that it's fine to pick and start 4 million to 4.5 defenders. There's some really good options at providing DEFCON, and obviously the baseline for defenders and maybe even midfielders under 6 million has changed, and what that means for the value of our forwards seems to have come down. I mean, I know it's only a small sample size, but it feels it's much more likely as well that midfielders get DEFCON on a regular basis. I think there's only 3 players have achieved it more than 3 or more times in the 5 games. Much more likely for defenders. So it does seem that the meta is suggesting that quite clearly now, defenders and with high chances of DEFCON are the way to go, and you'll probably see in a minute that's what's sort of enforced my draft really. So I'll load it up on screen and talk through each of my picks, and while I'm doing that, I'm just going to cross-reference why I think they're good picks with data and the fixtures to back it up. So from what I've seen, people who have also other content creators that have previewed their team, it's quite similar, perhaps with a few changes, but I'll run through all my picks. I think the goalkeeper one is an interesting one. Previous seasons, personally, I wouldn't go for a premium goalkeeper. But this, I kind of think, because the defenders can be cheaper and still get DEFCON, I might not always have an Arsenal defender over the course of the season. And it's my belief they probably will get the most clean sheets of this season. So why not spend more in the goalkeeper slot than I would traditionally, and pick a goalkeeper who I think is going to be fairly reliable for the clean sheets over the season, and just leave, let's say cheaper assets in general in my defensive line. I think Dubravka makes sense that he's obviously remains because he's good value, plays for a relegation team who are going to accumulate a lot of saves. I don't anticipate Raya to miss out that much. So in defence, you'll see that I'm leaning pretty heavily into DEFCON, really. Unsurprising. Senesi I've had for the last 2 game weeks, and he's done, he's got DEFCON in both of those and in all his games so far this season. He's got decent fixtures essentially through to game week 18, perhaps only one tough away game in that time against Man City. I wouldn't even mind playing him in that one. Now Tarkowski, I'm just going to bring up the fixtures just to sort of show why I'm sort of looking at him initially. So Everton, in fact I want to make it 4 fixtures. I think Everton have got like a nice selection of 3 home games in the next 4 game weeks, and I think at 5.5 million we've seen him rack up DEFCON in every game too, along with Senesi. He's the only defender to do that. I think with pivoting and having the wild card now, he seems like he's essentially what my Murillo replacement is, and obviously no Europe for Everton, and I fancy them to pick up let's say at least 1 clean sheet in the next 4 games. Here they are against West Ham at home, Crystal Palace, and Tottenham. And if he can get DEFCON, in 1 or 2 of those games, as he's been doing on top of that, I think he's a good pick for the short and even then medium term. After that, in my team, I'm looking at Gvardiol, which I think he's probably not that picked. I would say he's like my premium defender slot. I kind of think if the fixtures were better, this would be like a no-brainer Van Dijk pick because he's been so good on DEFCON. But I'm personally not keen on defensive double-ups, maybe to my own detriment. Otherwise, I would probably be on Gabriel. But I look at Burnley and Everton in 2 of the next 3 games at home for Man City, and I'll just jump back to the fixture ticker again. There they are. I think they're placed 6th there. Look at those 2 games, and I just think Burnley and Everton look like good clean sheet games. Brentford away, I wouldn't even mind that. City had just got back-to-back cleans before the Arsenal game against Man City and Napoli. Man United and Napoli, and were seconds away from doing it against Arsenal. I think Donnarumma's impact can't be understated, and I think those fixtures look prime for clean sheets and returns. And he picked up DEFCON against Arsenal. Perhaps he will he may do it in some other games, but I look at him as like my placeholder premium pick essentially. Mweki, I apologise if I pronounced that wrong, but he's my pick of the 4 million defenders for DEFCON. He is the highest rate per 90 minutes of all the 4 million picks, and he actually covers quite nicely for Tarkowski in game week 8 when Tarkowski is away against City and Mweki is at home to Wolves. So I quite like him in there. And finally, my 5th defender, maybe a surprise that it's not Anderson, but I think Anderson's fixtures for the next 6 game weeks are actually quite difficult. And comparing Richards to, let me just see which tab I've got to open in here. Here we go. Comparing Anderson here has managed 56 on the CBIT rating, Richards 51. So comparatively, it's not actually that much difference. But the fact that Richards came mostly in sort of, he got more in fewer games essentially to miss out. I rate Palace's defence as better than Fulham's, and their fixtures look to be better as well. So I don't envisage playing him that many times over the next 6 game weeks, but I think he's a better stand-in personally for Anderson, and plays for a better team. So that's why at the moment he's in my draft. I'm sorry, I was going to do the screen share there. So yeah, that's why he makes it into my squad. So in midfield, it's perhaps no surprise that I've gone for no Salah. He was a mainstay essentially all pre-season, but he just hasn't been justifying the price for me compared to Haaland. And we move into a period of 3 games now that look prime for Haaland capacity. Like I mentioned, for Gvardiol, he's got Everton, Burnley at home, Brentford away. He's already been outperforming Salah in trickier games, like he outscored him away to Arsenal. So I think at the moment it looks like the meta is moving towards a Haaland captaincy. So yeah, I think it makes sense to go there too. Bruno and Semenyo stay. For me, they've both done really well for this season. Both decent long-term fixtures as well. They've been good attacking output, both from open play and, to my surprise, Semenyo picked up some DEFCON as well, which is really welcome. Both decent prices. I think, for me, I'm lucky that Reinders didn't hurt me more than game weeks 2 to 5. He had the second highest expected points for midfielders under 6 million in that time. Forced shots in the box was the second highest. 0.47 xG was the second highest without returning a goal. I think he's just good value in that price bracket at only 5.5 million, and the fixtures are on their side too, like I've mentioned. So I think it's just a good pick to go there. I think Ndai is a bit of a wild card for me. He's not like a typical pick, like I mentioned with Shrewsbury Hall. Everton, like, attack doesn't really inspire me, and I've kind of suffered with Shrewsbury Hall, but he has been the consistent one of that Everton front line. He's returned in every game bar one, which was in game week 1. Where his points so far this season, 2, 8, 5, 6. 2, 8, 7, 5 and 6. He's got 4 DEFCON points and potentially pens in his locker too. I think with Everton's 3 of the next 4 at home against teams that are involved in Europe, I think he looks like a good one. Apart from West Ham, he looks like a good one. And I think the 5th midfielder slot is definitely a really interesting topic of conversation, because it depends what you want out of it. I think if at the moment I've got Caicedo in there, and I've talked a lot about him in previous episodes, especially when we did the game week 4 wildcard video that I really liked him. I'll put up on screen now. This is a rating of all the 5.6 million mids and less, and he is by far and away the most at the moment most reliable. You can see there he's got 8 DEFCON points, and he's got 45 CBIT, so he's by far and away the best performer on average per game. So I think with Caicedo you're looking at sort of like a base of 4, and if they keep a clean sheet, 5 points. And the fact that he's had 2 attacking returns as well is really encouraging. He just seems like a really good tick along player, and I think it's difficult to look past him, but perhaps you would only do it for budget. I think probably the backup options for me that I'm looking at are Xhaka, as well as Stach for Leeds. Stach is an interesting one. He's obviously done well this past weekend, which is making him really popular. We think he's on pens. He's had the joint most shots, I think 11, and the second most shots in the box 5, while also being top for key passes for midfielders under 5 million. So he's performing really well, and he's got DEFCON twice. And actually, if I picked him over Xhaka and Caicedo, I'd actually look at, could I play him this weekend, and how that would affect the rest of my team. I'm not quite sure yet, but yeah, I think this weekend, even against Bournemouth, is a good pick. I've spoken about Haaland a bit. He's leading the points at the moment, and like I mentioned, looks the he's banging form, and he looks like a great captaincy shout for at least the next 3 game weeks, if not the next 5. Pedro is in my team, perhaps because of the lack of Palmer. It's a shame, and I'll talk about just Saka and Palmer now, because they've both gone down so much in our estimation from the end of last season. Like Palmer's groin injury that Maresca says is going to be managed day by day or match by match is so off-putting. Like Chelsea have got a great run of fixtures from now, minus the Liverpool fixture in game week 7, and you want some input in that attack, but I don't think you can reliably pick Palmer, because like you saw in the Manchester United game at the weekend, he could have this groin issue flare up, which they say they're just managing. So Pedro looks like a safe, cheap way into that Chelsea front line for their good fixtures, and he's just great on bonus. So yeah, I've seen nothing from Pedro in the first 5 game weeks that makes me think I need to sell or get rid of him, especially while his ownership's so high. I think betting against him is just unnecessary. And I think that the third striker spot is definitely a cause of contention for me. I don't love Gyökeres. He's not impressed me when I've watched him. I appreciate he's new to the league, and again, one of my rules in FPL, as well as I didn't follow it with words, is I typically don't pick a new player to the league. He's definitely a bully, as Arsenal are to the weaker teams. So perhaps he's going to be really good for Arsenal's good fixture run, if I get that on screen actually, because we all know how good their Arsenal's run is for the next sort of 5 or 6 game weeks. Let's have a look on here. So Arsenal, after Newcastle, they've got West Ham at home, Fulham away, Crystal Palace home, both the promoted teams in Burnley and Sunderland back-to-back before Tottenham and Chelsea. So it gets a bit tougher, but it's basically a block of about 5 games there where, he could bully some of those defences. Admittedly, Fulham away and Crystal Palace at home are going to be tough. And I look at his price at 9 million. I know he's on penalties, but I'm still not sold on him, maybe to my detriment. And that kind of brings me back around a little bit to the Saka point, which I talked about premium midfielders. I feel like what we've got with Saka now that Madueke's out is we've got a player in Saka who's more than likely going to be good for 80 minutes a game, let's say, in the league, but without penalties and being nearly a million more than Gyökeres, it's just why would you go there? I just don't. Yeah, I think he's taken a big hit by losing penalties, and I think that's a shame because it would be nice to have more premium picks in place, but that's just how it is. I suppose one of the things that Gyökeres also has got in his locker, a bit like Saka now, with their competition being out, is it seems like Havertz and Jesus are still far away from being involved. Ben Jacobs reported on X that it could be still like a couple of months, so that's kind of good and bad. The good is that Gyökeres is obviously going to get starts. The bad is that he's going to have his minutes managed, because if Arsenal lose him to an injury from overplaying him, then they're like stuffed and they're playing like a false 9. So it's not an easy decision for him. And in his place at the moment is Richarlison. Like, if I bring up the screen share here of forwards, this is obviously via Hub Stats. So this is sorted by non-penalty XG, which is nuts when you look at Haaland. I mean, 6.2 in 5 games. And then you see the drop off to Beto in second. But yeah, Richarlison down here, 1.64. He's obviously not been that, got 5 out of 5 starts. He was rested after the international break. But I look at the fixtures for Tottenham, and if Solanke is still being introduced slowly, which, I wouldn't be surprised if he is. I know he's training again, so this does dent Richarlison a little bit. But I really like Tottenham's fixtures, like as much as Arsenal. Wolves at home this weekend is obviously a great entry point, and I think if I was doing a free hit, it would be a Tottenham double up in attack and one defender as well, because Wolves have just been absolutely diabolical. Leeds away, I think is a fine fixture as well. Aston Villa at home, I think, is a good one, given how by then, after the international break, it remains to be seen whether Emery's going to be in charge. Everton, I think, is a tough one, but I think Richarlison seems like the best 6 to 7 million player at the moment. He could also be on penalties, we don't know, but it's quite likely if he's on the pitch. Yeah, he's just like an alternate option. You guys have to let me know what you think in the comments. Is there a striker I'm missing you could downgrade to Foster? But I think what you'll see when I bring it back to my lineup is I've still got a lot of money in the bank here. Like, I could full commit to playing a 4-4-2. I could get Van Dijk in for someone like Richards. Richarlison could become Foster. I could easily fund that. The 3 million also could fund Richarlison if I absolutely hate him after Wolves and get Gyökeres in. And similarly, there's ways to get to Saka in this draft, but admittedly, I don't love that. Like, Richarlison could go to Foster and of Burnley, and Caicedo could go up towards Saka. So yeah, this is at the moment the kind of draft I'm liking. No double ups in defence, which is like a key thing for me, and there's a good out point for Gvardiol if he's not performing after 3 game weeks when Liverpool's fixtures get slightly better. And it's just what I do about that third striker and the extra money. It just feels like because of DEFCON and like cheaper players are now accessible, there's lots of money to be spent. So yeah, that's where the draft is at the moment. So any comments, questions, thoughts that perhaps help me? Usually I've got Kieran here to bounce my ideas off, but maybe he'll reply. But yeah, if you do have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. Similarly, if you're on Wildcard, let me know some of the differentials you might be picking for me to consider. But I think this is definitely a blend of what the templates need to be because of the lack of premiums. And why would you bet against DEFCON defenders now? But with a few differentials sprinkled in there. Yeah. So Kieran and I should be back on Thursday evening for our team selection video. I think Kieran's going to talk about free hit a little bit. And I'm sure he's going to talk about his bench boost and how well that went in game week 5. But for now, thanks everyone for sticking with my first episode. And yeah, if you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And we will see you Thursday. Bye-bye.